conference. In order not to be too delayed. So thank you for everybody to come to this conference. I also start to thank, as usual, Organ Novels, who has the kindness to allow us to do this cycle of conference here in their beautiful place. And I will already immediately start with just a small reminder about what is this cycle about. The idea was to try to have discussed by several people of several countries a cycle to understand how the relations between private firms and universities or public establishment is going, and how the different countries are dealing with that kind of problematic. So we had already Germany with Kronecker, who explained us how it goes on in Germany. Then we had Tom Maliska, a US attorney, who come and discuss about his experience in relationship between this kind of public companies and private companies. And now we have the pleasure to introduce Diego Pallini from the firm Notar Bartolo and Gervas, who is specialized. He's a patent agent, an engineer, and he specialized also in transfer of technology, know-how, and he will explain us how it goes in his own country, which is Italy. So Diego, thank you again for you to come to this place and let us know how it goes in your country. And now I will let you speak.
Okay. Let's see, Frederic. I don't know if it's working. Yes, do you hear me? Yeah. So I've been told to stay here because the camera cannot follow me. So instead of walking around the room, I will stay here. So thank you again for the invitation of being here and for having the opportunity to share experiences, because I think it's very important. You know, the situation in Europe is going merging in some way in the same direction. So if we can both benefit of the experience, bad or good, that each of us had in his own country, I think would be very, very, very interesting. A few words to explain who I am and what is my experience. So I'm not an engineer, but I have a degree in pharmaceutical chemistry, and the firm Notar Bartolo and Gervas is I don't know if it's young or old, 50 years of activity, but the peculiarity of our business is since 1997 we started a separate company called Energy Consulting, just to assist the companies with the technology transfer. And I was explaining just a few minutes ago, because we had the file rooms in our offices full of hundreds of patent application, from the National Research Council, from universities, from professors, and realized that all these patents were absolutely useless for the entity, for the institution that filed it. So they do not, of course, they did not license, they did not use, from one time to the other they decided to abandon it without any strategic reason behind that. So we realized that it was really a waste of money, a waste of time for us. It was good for our firm because we filed hundreds of patent applications. But this kind of strategy from the public institution on the long term is absolutely negative, because if on the long term you have just cost from the intellectual property, sooner or later you will stop using intellectual property, because you will say, well, intellectual property gives no result, it's not efficient, it's not a good instrument for us. But the problem in reality was, as we will see very soon, in the organization, how to use intellectual property. And so this is the reason why we, from the patents, we started being very active in technology transfer, trying to convince the institutions to use all the patrimony they have in intellectual property since 1997. So we have a long experience. We made a lot of mistakes at the beginning. We learned a lot from these mistakes, and so now we have some ideas and some experience to share with you. So this is more or less what we will see this morning. First of all, what is the public research in Italy? Just to have an idea of what we are speaking about. So, which are the players, which are the numbers, both in patenting, both in the agreements, to have a general idea of the phenomenon. Second big area is the ownership, because the ownership is one of the areas that, in our experience, has been blocking an efficient use of intellectual property for many years, and at least in Italy is still blocking it. And maybe we can discuss in more details this experience. And third area is the cooperation between public entities and private companies. It is the goal that I think each of us want to reach, to have an efficient cooperation between public and private sector. And so I will follow this track, but I'm very glad if there is some intervention, some discussion, because so the presentation is more alive. So feel free to ask me if something is not clear, if my English is not so clear.
I think your English is perfect.
I just want to be sure that the sound is sufficient. So maybe if you speak a little bit louder, maybe. And second point, just to react about the first things you said with regard to this whole bunch of patent coming from the universities, which were sleeping, as a matter of fact, and finally become abandoned because it was not used at all. Just one question. So you managed to find a way to use such kind of whole bunch of patent and organize a kind of license of all these?
So you want to know the end of the story?
Okay, so I'm waiting. Okay.
In some way, yes. So the situation is improving. So I hope to end my presentation with some positive, some positive news. I hope so. So this is what has been the situation before, what I was mentioning. So the reason why there was this 1,000 of patent applications.
It's better. We can hear that the sound is better. Or maybe you should prefer.
Yes, yes, but you have to use it.
Just, I think when we speak here, we are hearing better.
Yes, it's louder. Yes. And so, yes, definitely better. And
it's for the recorder.
yes. So the problem at that time, so I'm speaking about the 90s, is that there was no regulation, no rule. I have to say no interest. So there was something in the public institution that heard that they had to file some patent applications, but they really did not understand why. And so there was no promotion, no protection. So there was no spread of information. No involvement of of the professors. And so the real situation was that there was completely freedom to do whatever each subject inside the public entity wanted to do. It's sort of life in the jungle, because each professor was patenting by himself, was making agreements independently with companies that instead had to pay the university, because of course he was using the structure of the laboratories of the universities. And so at that time we were working on both sides. We were working for the public institutions and for the professors, because there was no provision in the law, so the professor was legally free to acquire all the benefits of the public structures and of the public research, and do what he wanted. And in fact there were some groups of smart professors that did a very good business, so they made very good contracts with private companies. Maybe they build up their own company. And on the other side was the public institution that were filing patents without any follow-up, without any strategy. And so the IP, it was not in the teaching programs, and we know that the solution or the majority of the problem starts from the teaching, from the teaching. So if an engineer or a chemical come out from the university without having any idea what is intellectual property or the basic principle, how it works, when he's inside a company, he has no idea of how to protect, how to use intellectual property. So at that time there was no course at all, no teachings, and we will see that now the situation is slowly becoming better and better. But at that time there was absolutely no information.
It was in the 90s.
90s, yes.
Okay. It's only 20 years ago, almost.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And by the way, my thesis in 85 was about the patent protection of pharmaceutical products. That was really a strange subject for that time. Now it's normal, but that time it was so original, the patenting of pharmaceutical products. And so the researchers were and are interested in scientific publication. And also this is a key point, because I don't know how it is in France, but in Italy the public employees in the research centers have benefits, have points for their career. At that time just for publications. A few years ago it has been introduced also a reward for filing a patent application, for getting an European patent. And so there is also an incentive, a stimulus for the researchers to file patent application. And this could be good, yes, generally speaking definitely good, but the effect is that for many researchers the filing of a patent application is seen as a publication. Well, I do the publication, or better, I do the patent application, then I do the publication, I get double points, so it's not considered as a protection, as a business tool, as possibility to get revenues for the university. So it's a culture, is a mentality that have to change again. And now the situation is changing, and the red lines, I will move it at the top, because the driving force, particularly of these years, is that the government dramatically diminished the number of the financial support to universities and to the research center. So these public institutions have been forced to find some other way to finance themselves. And one possible way, of course, is to file patents and to try to obtain licensing. But in our experience, this has been the driving force. Because, you know, if until the money is for free, it's coming every year from the government without any commitment to produce clear results from your research. Yes, you have to file publication, or you have to be cited in other publication, international publication, but this is a very general goal. And in any case, you have the money for free from the state. But if the situation change, as it was in, you know, the crisis started in 2007, 2008, this has been a very, very strong pressure on the public institution to start using the licensing and the patent as a business tool. And the other driving force for the changes are the global economy, so more contacts with international universities, particularly with American universities, because you know that American university has been the first one using this kind of model for the internal development of, you know, the MIT, the Stanford, or what are the biggest. I studied particularly these two models, and they started in the 80s using licensing and patents as a normal tool inside the university. And so also for Italian university, having more contacts with these kind of realities, there is a lot of exchange of professors, researchers, and for example, recently well, 2 or 3 years ago, we started working with a very big research center in Genoa, but this is because a professor who went to the University of California, Los Angeles, I think, stayed there for many years, so learned a lot about how the research is managed inside the University in California, then came back. Now he is responsible of a big research unit of, I don't remember, 300, 400 researchers. And the first thing he did when coming back to Italy was starting a patenting policy and licensing so and so. But at least, well, you know, the patent is the first brick that you have to place. So the question is, can the IP management system fill the gap and strike a balance? Because so the licensing could be a source of revenues for public entities, but for sure it cannot support all the research, because the public institution has as a statute goal the basic research usually. And basic research is not usually patentable. But the answer, maybe we will understand better during the speech, could cover some of the cost of the research. This is the structure of the university in Italy. So that there are the state university, I think is more or less the same also here in France, a state university, and these universities has the same legal framework. I mean, of course, for, I don't know, the contracts for the employee, the contracts for the researchers, but in Italy are very important also many public research institutes. I mentioned just a few. The biggest one is the National Research Council, il Consiglio Nazionale delle Ricerche, and I think also in France we have a similar system. So the size of the National Research Council in Italy is very big, because it's, I don't know, probably is almost 1,000 researchers with institutes all over the country, from north to south. The institute I mentioned you before of the professor coming back from California is the Italian Institute of Technology, which is a public one, is quite new. It has been established in 2010 in Genova, and well, is well organized. It has 7 different areas of research activity, and they do just research. And then the Italian Space Agency, there is the Fondazione Bruno Kessler for electronics. So there are many public institutions. On the other side, there are the non-state universities. That is not the subject of our speech today. And the non-state universities are particularly in the medical field. For example, San Raffaele is he was owned by the church practically, but they went bankruptcy 2 years ago. So a private entrepreneur bought all the system, and now it's completely private. The Lewis University is financed by the Association of Industry, of Italian Industries, so Confindustria, and so on. But this is a completely different world.
The church has patent?
Yes, this kind of the San Raffaele, before going bankruptcy, they had a very good patent portfolio. They had an internal licensing department, and they never licensed one patent, never. We tried, but this is we will see is common to almost all the entities, because we will see later. Every public institutions now has an internal technology transfer office, because the government gave a lot of money in the past years in order to create this technology transfer office. And so, but this technology transfer office, they don't know what to do. You know, it's simple. From one day to the other, they have the money, they move the employees from one department to the technology transfer office, and say, well, we have the technology transfer office, we have 15 people dealing with technology transfer, we are so skilled, we are so successful, but these people, they don't know nothing. It's a complex process, the technology transfer. There are many tricks, and so the result is really zero. Particularly for San Raffaele, also if it's a private one. In fact, they went bankruptcy, but a public one cannot go bankruptcy. And so, as I was saying before, there is a general legal framework which is common for every body, every public body. The IP legal framework is the most important is in 2001, because it has been for the first time that the law introduced some provision regarding the ownership. Because as I was saying in the introduction, there was absolutely nothing regarding the ownership of the public inventions. In 2001, so 10 years ago, a little more, for the first time it has been introduced some idea. There were many mistakes in that legislation, because it was clearly written by a person who didn't know the mechanism of the internal research and of the valorization of the public research. But now, after in 2005, there has been the completely new law in Italy, so the intellectual property code, or better, industrial property code. And inside the industrial property code, it has been completely written by scratch. This code is a very good legislation. I don't know if you're familiar, probably not, but it's very well up to date because it has been written in 2005. So, and there are 3 articles that we will analyze in more details later, 63, 4, and 5, that deals with the ownership of the results of the research. And particularly the ownership of the public research has been amended again in 2006. So you see that is a process of doing better and better. And I think it's a positive situation because it means that there is interest. Someone in the government understood that is an important issue inside the life of the public life, the public management. So, who are the players? This is, I don't know if you can read it. You can read it because it's the quality is not perfect. So this is just the number of the families, the patent families in total. You see that the major one is the National Research Council. And this, the reason is because they have the biggest number of researchers in Italy, and they have some sort of internal IP office. They had since I don't know, since the 90s a technology transfer office, but as I was saying before, without any idea how to do the work. This will become public, this agitation. I'm a bit scared. Is someone from National Research Council here to me? But this is true. Nobody can deny. And then the Polytechnic of Milan. You know the difference between, maybe it's the same in France. The Polytechnic is the faculties of engineers and architecture and design, and the University of Milan is more for humanistic chemistry, pharmaceutical chemistry, so law, and so on. And so this is the reason why Politecnico, usually Politecnico of Milan and of Turin are on the top of the rankings. And so I need my glasses. And just to let you understand what is our experience, we have now agreements in force with the National Research Council, with the Polytechnic of Milano, with the University of Sapienza, with the University of Padova, with the University of Florence, University of Bicocca. We have just acquired all their technology transfer, the technology transfer of the portfolio, the entire portfolio of the University of Bicocca. University of Palermo, we worked in the past, but we decided to stop attending the bids because it was absolutely useless. But I'm saying this just to explain that you know from inside what's happening within these organizations. And I'm speaking more about technology transfer than patenting now, because the subject of today is technology transfer. So this is just to see the evolution of the patenting activity, and you see that I think you can see two things from this picture. That the activity of patenting started growing in 2001, and as I said before, in 2001 it has been introduced for the first time the ownership of the results, the rules regarding the ownership of the results. And the second the second information is that in any way the patenting activity is increasing, notwithstanding the crisis, because with the financial crisis the budget has been really cut dramatically, particularly for the public institutions. And of course there is a gap between publication and filing for the families by priority date. You know that least the 18 months secrecy period. So, but we will see later the numbers of the 2014. The activity is growing up. This is just to give an idea of the top 5 institutions, the number of families, patent families during the time, and you see what I mentioned in the introduction. So 94-95, the major part of these patent families were in our filing rooms, but it was really sad to see this paper useless. It cost a lot of money. Well, we were happy, but it cost a lot of efforts for the patent attorney to get the patent, but it was no use at all.
Most of these patents are European patents?
Well, at that time, yes, because at that time the basic strategy was European patent, US and Japan, because Japan was still filing, and particularly in that time there was a special program for the National Research Council called Progetti Finalizzati, so finalized projects. That the idea behind that projects were to address the research towards the interest of the private companies. So the National Research Council selected at that time what were the major requests from the industries, and then they gave the team of research, this team of research, to the internal researchers. But at the end, if there is no technology transfer, anyway the patent is used. So it was not commissioned research, it was something in the middle. This is just to show what are the major areas of activity, technical areas of activity. And you see, for example, that the National Research Council, they are active in more or less all the technical fields. I don't know if you are familiar with the International Patent Classification, but the major areas are A61K, which is pharmaceutical chemistry, so drugs and delivery systems and so on, and the G class is more or less ICT, so internet, telecommunications, and so on. And yes, strange to say, Politecnico is very active in pharmaceutical area, but probably this is for the devices, not for molecules, new molecules. And just to answer to your question before, this is a geographic spread of the patent families. You see that Europe is, of course, not Europe, because you see that there is the Turkey inside, so it's more the area of the European Patent Convention, so European patent. Then the United States, and you see also that the white areas are particularly the areas outside the PCT treaty, so the part of the South America, Taiwan, because the most used instrument by the public institutions is the PCT tool. And these are the most recent data, so accumulated 2002-2011 CNR 462 patent families. So these are families, and you have to multiply it for the foreign filings. So our good numbers, are not peanuts. So, and it's also, it requires a big budget to manage almost 500 patent families for some years. Politecnico 151, and these are the last year filings. So these are normally secret patent applications, but I had it directly from. You see the netval. I don't know if you know the netval. Probably not, because it's a network of Italian universities and public institutions. The goal of netval is trying to promote the patent information among the universities, so they collect all the data and they circulate it. And so you see that anyway are good numbers, because for example 24 filings as the Politecnico filed last year is big companies, industrial company in Italy that files 20-30 patent applications. So it's a good budget. IIT is the institute I mentioned you before, the Istituto Italiano di Tecnologia, and then the other universities.
And that's just these numbers are the first filings.
First filings
in Italian.
In Italian, yes. And this is why they should be secret. But you know, in Italy there is a peculiarity. I think they is the only one in the world, because the patent application must be secret. But you can have from the public database the information regarding the owner and the title of the invention. It should be secret. So I don't know why it's public. And this is is closer to our discussion of today, because this is the number of the agreements done by the Politecnico with the private companies, with industries. The first one is inventions from finance research. So this table is just for finance research. It's not independent research of the Politecnico. So the research is financed by the industry, and at the end the invention or the patent is transferred to the industry. And this is an indication of the quality of the research that the Polytechnic or many other public institutions can produce, because last year, so 38 patents or inventions has been generated by the Politecnico. They were financed by the industry, so they was automatically transferred outside, but it means that inside the public research there are the capacity, the knowledge to produce practical invention, practical results that can be used by the industry. And this is the last table. This is not so updated, but this is the number of the agreements done between the universities and private companies. And so I'm sorry, it's in Italian, but if you see the fourth line from the bottom is the total number of agreements, and you see that there is 89, 91, 64, 61 agreements done every year by all the public institutions.
Diego, that's very interesting. And how these numbers are found, it's because all the universities are giving their numbers
yes.
of license to the netval.
Yes. Because you know, one of the most secret information is regarding the licenses agreement, because you know that inside any license agreement there is always the secrecy clause. But in this case, as netval is an internal network of the universities, they collect this. Well, it's just a general information, just to have an idea of the evolution of the agreement. And I think that the most interesting information is the number of the first line, when you see 0, the number of licenses and option agreements, because this number is decreasing. So the number of universities without any kind of agreements with external companies is decreasing year after year. So it was 28, 21, 17, 27, 20. So it means anyway that all the universities is trying to do something to have contacts, to have agreement with the outside world.
What do you mean by option agreement?
Means an interest for a technology or for a patent, and usually the company pays a fee for simply testing or analyzing better the technology, and so at the end of the option agreement maybe it's transformed in a license agreement or not if the results are not positive. But anyway, an option agreement means an interest of an industry for the research. And this is the kind of the geographic distribution of the agreements, and from 2006 until 2012 it's interesting because the number of the national agreements diminished and instead increased the number of the European and non-European decreased again, but we had more and more agreement with other European industries. And practically speaking, in our experience, we manage really hundreds of technology transfer projects, and the vast majority of the interest for the technology transfer project comes from United States, because in United States the companies are used to have this kind of tool as normal strategic tool inside the company. So if we propose a technology to a US company, immediately they are in a position to understand, to analyze the technology. They have internal team to manage the licensing process. On the contrary, in Europe it's something casual, random. So if you write, apart from the big multinational group, for example the car companies or the big pharma companies, which are very well organized, but comparing the middle-sized company in US and in Europe, in US you have immediately an answer. Well, no, we are not interested, or let's see, we may sign an option agreement. In Europe, maybe you don't have any answer, or they made silly questions. But the culture between the two continents, Europe and US, in this field is dramatically different. And so now let's...
Just one question.
Yes.
That's very interesting, this change of mentality between US and Europe. But everybody in Europe has this kind of mentality. I mean, when you're speaking about German, French, English, they are all the same way of functioning with regard to the interest of not responding immediately.
Yes. Definitely yes. The difference in our experience is just the size of the company. So if the size of the company is a multinational, or in these two particular fields, automotive and pharmaceutical. In the other areas is really the desert. And particularly, I'm sorry to say France, because we tried many times to establish some relations with the French companies proposing technology. And the problem is not that there is no interest for the technology, but there is no answer. You understand that on the other side there is nobody who can manage this kind of process. And France has a lot of similarities with Italy, so we really could share and have benefit from the technologies. But maybe we will come again in the last part. The real problem is a problem of, again, training, culture, training, because it's a new way to do business. It's a new, in brackets, for Europe, and the only way to learn how to do it is to study. You cannot. A lot of people think that technology transfer. Well, what does it mean? You write to 10 companies. If there is an interest, it's good. Otherwise, your project is lost. But it's not this way. It's more complicated. And one particular issue is that at the basis of the technology transfer, there must be a patent. So there must be a deep knowledge of the patent legislation, of the patent procedure, or it seems normal to us. We are all active in intellectual property, but you know very well that there are in the patent life peaks of the cost, depending on the different phases of the procedure. So if you do not consider these peaks of the cost during the licensing process, maybe you arrive at a time when you have to take a decision and you have a peak of the cost, so you have to pay a lot of money without having any information for making the right decision. And so at the end you simply do not pay money and you waste everything. So these simple dynamics are not known by the public entities, but the people, the 15 people in the technology transfer office. And you have to learn. They have to learn. So these are the 3 articles in Industrial Property Code that speak about the ownership. It's interesting because the Article 64 is general for the ownership of the inventions, but the 65 article we will see is written as an exception to the Article 64. So everything in the Article 64 is applicable to the public research apart what is written in the 65. The 63, I think, is present in every IP legislation. So the only interesting things I highlighted in red, the right can be assigned and transferred, and the right is to the author or to his successor in title. So of course it means that if an inventor is an employee of the public institution, the right could be transferred or is automatically transferred to his successor in title.
Just one question,
yes.
Just because it is important.
It's with regard to the fact you mentioned the fact that the ownership of the patent application of an inventor is belonging to the inventors or his successor in title. But is it automatic, for instance, that the employee of a firm will automatically transfer the ownership to the firm? Or is it something which has some conditions?
Yes. No, it's automatic. So I didn't want to go into many details for the private inventions, because the topic of today is the public invention, so Article 65. But anyway, it's automatic because so if you are an employee in a private company, automatically the right is to the company.
And this is not depending of his task because to mention it in France, and it is true for, of course, a guy who is working in a university or in a private firm, the invention belongs to the employer, which means the firm or the universities, if it's in which is what we call an invention mission, which because he has a mission to invent, so it belongs to the employer.
Yes.
But if he has no mission to invent and he is making an invention in the field of the firm or the university, then we have that in France which is called invention attribuable, which means that the private firm or the university can preempt the invention in exchange of assignment by the owner. Because so that is it quite similar in Italy or not?
Well, it's similar for the private companies, and in fact this is the distinction that you made, the three kind of invention which has a different treatment, but for the private companies. And we will see in Article 65 that for the employees of the public institution is completely different. So for the public institutions, the invention is of the inventor, full stop. And we will see later how it will complicate the issues. So this is true for the private companies. So 64.1, service invention. This is the most common situation. The invention is made within the company, within the time of the company, within using the structure of the company, and important to read in red, and the employee receive a compensation, because this makes a difference. If in the employment contract there is a specific compensation for the inventive activity he performs inside the company.
Okay, that's the same thing in France.
Same. And so you know very well the system. You see requirements. So there must be an employment contract. The invention have to be made inside the employment contract, and the inventive activity have to be specifically remunerated. The employer has the right to the patent, and the inventor has just the right to be recognized as an author. If there is no specific compensation, there is the right for the inventor to have a fair reward. And I don't know if you have the same system also in France. Now, about the fair reward, there are thousands of pages written, because it's quite complex situation. Also, we manage many litigation regarding the amount of the fair reward, because it's always difficult to establish this fair reward. And well, it's interesting to say, that in Italy since 2003 we have the special court for intellectual property, and this topic of the fair reward has been recently moved from the labor court to the intellectual property court. So, and for us it's definitely better, because this kind of litigation regards simply patents. You have to quantify what is the value of a patent, and in the labor court it's not a matter of labor or employment contract, it's a matter of valuation of a patent.
Just intervening, because with regard to France, it's a little bit slightly different, because we have, when you are making what we call an invention mission, which is mentioned in your contract that you have an inventive mission in your work, then the invention belongs to the employer, and the employee has the right to compensation. That's only that which is said. It's not mentioned, there is not this distinction you have in Italy, which if it's mentioned, the remuneration in the contract, that's one thing. If it's not mentioned, then it's a fair reward. In France, nothing is really mentioned in the contract, and the inventor has a fair reward, and this fair reward is taking care approximately of the same elements that you have mentioned with regard to the success of the invention and so on. It's not exactly the same, by the way, but and because the way you calculate is more, to me, it's not so far away from the way it's calculated in Germany.
Yes, you're right.
And just to finish on these matters, we have also a court which is dealing with the fair reward of the invention, and we have, as a matter, two elements. We have the Commission nationale des inventeurs salariés, which is at the French Patent Office, where you can introduce a case with the employer if you are not agreeing about the fair rewards.
It's a sort of arbitration.
Right, and then we can go to the tribunal, which is not at all the prud'homme tribunal, the tribunal of the employee. It's a tribunal de grande instance de Paris. There's always been like that. And but anyway, just to mention what's going on in France.
Thank you. Well, it's very interesting to make this comparative analysis. And so this is what I said before: the inventor has the right to this fair reward. And the third situation, which happens not so often, it's invention which has been made by an employee of the company, but outside the time of the contract, and using independent structures, but the invention is within the field of the company. So in this case, I think is wrong the three bottom lines, because the employer has the right of an option to buy the patent from the inventor. The inventor has the right to the patent, but he has to offer for the first time to his employer. Just other two.
Just to mention, that's the
Yes.
same thing in France. We have
Same.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a not well-known clause. This is 64.6, and I had the chance to use it twice. It has been funny because nobody knows this article, but it's very clear. It's very simple. Any kind of patent application which has been filed within 1 year after the interruption of the contract, automatically the patent application belongs to the employer. So as the researchers don't know this clause, they leave the company, they file a patent application, of course, using all the knowledge they acquire inside the company, but if the company wants, they can call back the patent application. And so now we come to the direct subject of the ownership for the public institution. So you see that the article starts with, notwithstanding Article 64, when a working relationship is with the university or a public administration entity, a researcher is the exclusive holder of the right. And this is the most important declaration within the law, because it's completely different as you can see from the Article 64. 64 is everything is on the employer. This is everything on the inventor, on the researchers. And this simple statement gave rise to many discussions, many issues, because you may understand that in my personal opinion it has no sense that a researcher which has an employment contract with a public entity, public or private, it makes no difference, because it's using time and structures of an employer, public or private. And so the result, the basic statement of the patent law is that a patent belongs to the entity who support the cost and the risk of the research. It's the same if it's private or if it's public. This is one consideration. The second consideration is that usually the researcher has no idea how to use, how to exploit, how to manage these research results. But anyway, this is the law, so we must we must comply with the law. But again, in my opinion, this is one of the reasons why the public research is working not so well in Italy. This is because the rights are on the inventor. The inventor is not an entrepreneur; he's a public employee. Completely different mentality, completely different also mental tools, how to stay on the market. You know that the researchers are interested in science, publications, in making international conferences, and maybe some money. But the patent, it costs money, the research, it costs money, so there is this gap that is completely wrong in my opinion, and this is one of the reasons why the public research is not producing the result that should give. And again, the bottom line is, an inventor shall file his patent application and communicate the same to the administration entity. So the right to the patent is on the inventor.
When you say shall file, he has to pay for it, or it's a university?
Yes, no, this is the law. Then I will tell, sorry, about the practical situation. But the law states, I'm a public inventor, I've obtained a good result, it works, and so I file a patent application on my name, and then I say to the university, well, I have this application, let's do something together.
Is it a right or an obligation for the inventor?
No, it's a right.
It's a right, it's not obliged.
Well, there is a provision, if I'm not wrong, that if the inventor do not file a patent application, the right shifts to the university. But the inventor has the first right to his invention. And so, I read because it's more clear. Universities and public entities, within the scope of their autonomy, establish the maximum amount of the fee owed to the same university or public entities or to private entities financing the research, as well as any further profile of the reciprocal relationship for licenses granted to third parties for the use of the invention. In other words, you see on the bottom, this compensation could stay between 0 and 50% for the public entity and 100% for the inventor. So the public entity in any case cannot have more than 50% of the revenues coming from the invention. I don't know what is your opinion, but
just to mention, with regard to the research made in the universities, we have, with regard to the royalties, which will be, for instance, obtained by the university through a transfer contract with a private firm, we have an obligation in our law to provide 50% of the royalties to the inventors until a certain extent. But it's quite similar, which is interesting. That's something we will do in our comparative practice law studies with regard to the different countries, Germany, France, etc. Because just to mention, in Germany they have also this problem with the professors who are working in the universities and who have a very big power, which is now decreasing. When we can see is that in Italy there is obviously a problem with regard to that, and we perfectly understood what you said when you said, well, it's certainly a little bit killing the business. That's part of the problem. Part of the problem of the transfer of technology between private firms and universities is coming from this question of remuneration of the inventors. Because there is a difference between the inventors in the universities and in the private industries. They are not treated the same way. And this one thing with regard to licensing, but it's also a problem when you have co-ownership between co-development of universities and private firms, which is another one.
Yes, And so I didn't mention that you can see on the title. This is the situation when the university has a regulation, an internal regulation. So in this regulation, the law introduces some limits. That is the 50% limit. If the university has no regulation, so there is no specific rule about it, the inventor has the right to receive not less than 30%, and the university shall receive 30% of the revenues. So it's slightly different, but now I have to say that all the public entities have an internal regulation regarding intellectual property. So this has been a good changes, because at least we have some documents stating some rules. Then we can improve it, but the 99% of the situation is share of fees with regulation. This is something I was saying before. So after 5 years, it's obligation to implement. Elapsed from the date of issuance, so not from the date of filing, but from the date of issuance. So it means, well, in Italy now it's there is no examination. So after 2-3 years, the patent is issued. Should the inventor not have initiated an industrial exploitation, the public entity automatically acquires a royalty-free, non-exclusive right to exploit the invention. But I never heard of the use of this article. And this is fundamental. This has been introduced in the amendment of 2006. Because you may understand the importance of this. The provisions set forth in this article do not apply to researchers financed in whole or in part by private entities, or implemented in the framework of specific research projects financed by public entities other than the university. So contractual freedom for the public entity. Before 2006, this clause was not in the law. So in practical terms, the companies were financing the research, and the invention was property of the inventor.
Get all the money.
Yes, it was a very good business. But the real situation was that no more company, no more industry was financing the university research. It's logical. So in 2006 has been introduced this derogation from the Article 64.
So what is now the usual remuneration of the inventors according to this modification?
You mean in the private financed research?
Yes. The inventor get what?
Oh, it depends. I don't know. It's completely freedom between. It's a contractual statement, and
we should introduce that in our.
Because it's not in the French law.
If you are an inventor, if you are in
France, if you are an inventor from a public entity, and you are there is a patent which is filed generally by the public entity, and we are in the situation where there is a private firm who has also financed and be part of the co-invention. You can say then the inventor will anyway get 50% or with a top, which is in the law, of the royalties that the university will get for the whole deal. So therefore, there is still the problem. We don't have any real freedom, total freedom, in a way that obviously you seem to have in Italy, which is a good point.
Yes. No, in fact, this part of the research is working. So the private financed research is working very well. And now, as the university has understood the value of this kind of contracts, usually there is also a remuneration for the entities. So the private company finance the researchers, pays the inventor, but pays also the university. But usually it's paid not by royalties, it's paid normally, yes. It's paid the time. And so, now we are entering the third area. I don't know if you have any specific question with the first two areas, so Italian players and ownership regulations. So this is the what a TTO should do, because technology transfer office should manage the technological aspect, the legal aspects, and the business aspects. This is a theory, so I will list what should be the ideal world and I will tell you what is happening in Italy regarding each of this area. And as I was saying before, now almost all of the public entities has an internal TTO, at least formally, employing many people. In many cases, more than 10 people are managing the technology transfer office, but the result is we will talk at the end. So I have time until
it's 10. You still
half an hour.
A quarter of an hour.
So this is the ideal world for the technology management. So research strategy, research planning, research contracts, patent information search, technology evaluation, meaning marketability and patentability, invention disclosures, and technology transfer process. And so, I should take as an example the best in my experience of the technology transfer office in Italy, which is the one of the Polytechnic of Milano, which has not so many people. They are a group of 5-6 people, but they are doing a good job. I mean, they are managing the TTO in a good way. And on the other side, there is the normal TTO, that is the other 90% of the TTO of the public institution. So the first three aspects, so the research aspects, are absolutely not dealing with both in the Polytechnic or TTO nor in the other normal technology transfer office. What is due quite normally, but almost all of the Italian TTOs, the patent information search. Because I don't know if you have it in France, there is the PatLib network, which is financed by the European Patent Office, when they give for free all the patent information, the patent database. So the Italian TTOs, almost all the public entities have a PatLib inside. The problem is that you know that to do a meaningful search on the patent database is quite complicated. You need to understand a lot of the technology and a lot about patent law. So the Italian TTO have this good patent information, patent database. The output, so the result of the searches they give internally to the researchers, depends a lot on the quality of the people that do the research. And in practical terms, any time that they want to have a reliable opinion or search regarding patentability or freedom to operate, they ask to outside counsel, because they do not rely on internal structure. So this kind of structure is normally used just to give an orientation to the research. Yes. And so So this is quite well covered, this aspect of the patent information. Regarding technology evaluation, this is usually done by the inventor, so not by the TTO itself, because of course it's just the inventor who has the knowledge of the technology and more or less where the technology should go. So the result of this activity within the public entities depends a lot of the skills, of the international knowledge, the personal acquaintances of the inventor. So it's not a structured activity, technology evaluation. And I have to say also that in Italy we have a very positive legislation. I don't know if you are familiar with it. If you file a national patent application, you have a search report. Probably you have the same in France. You have a search report done by the APO. Okay. But the good news for the Italian filers is that the cost for this search report is something around 200 euros.
Same thing in France?
Yes. So the other part is financed by the government, because I know that the Italian government pays to the APO around 2,000 euros for the search, but the inventor pays just a little money. So within few months the inventor has a good search done by the APO, and so the patentability opinion, usually the way followed is to file a patent application, to wait the search report, and then to decide, because the only problem is that you may have lost 2,000, 3,000 euro for filing the patent application. And so this is the reason why the patentability opinion are not so much used, particularly for the public institutions.
That's the same thing in France.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's the right way to do things. And marketability is a completely different issue, and because it's marketability means you have patented the technology, and then you have to understand if there is a market for it. And usually we start working on the marketability so after the patent has been filing, and we have interviews with the inventor, with the inventors, together with the TTO people, and and trying to get the information from the inventor where the technology can be used. And the funny thing is, in many situations, you ask to the inventor, what is used for your invention? Well, I don't know, it works, it's a good result, it's nice, but I don't know where it can be used. You cannot believe, but it's a common answer from a scientist. It's funny, I have a good result, it works, the theory is confirmed, but I don't know where to use it. So marketability is really a difficult step. And now, for example, the Politecnico has started doing some search on this regard, because what we try to do is to teach them how to deal with this technology transfer process, because it's not the best way to do it that we as a private company, as a consulting company, manage all these steps for the public entities. So for the best efficiency of the process, this step of the process have to be managed internally. But for the time being, we do it outside. The Politecnico learned a lot. The other TTO, they don't do it. And the most important thing they do it is the invention disclosures. So because they have to extract from the laboratories what could be patentable, and of course this can be done just by other internal employees. Of course we cannot go inside the laboratories and say what is in the drawer and also in this case the quality of the research coming outside from the public entities depends a lot of how the employees, the internal employees do the invention disclosure, are able to catch it. Now, if you go on the website, almost all universities have the forum for the invention disclosure, are well organized, but the forum is not enough. You have to go to speak to the inventor. What have you done in the last 6 months? Did you have any result? So it's complex work. And then the technology transfer process. Technology transfer process has different steps from the first contact you have with companies. Usually, if there is an interest, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement, then you have to supply the confidential information, then sign an option agreement. So there are many steps that can lead to a license contract. And in our experience, it's fundamental for the success of any technology transfer process the cooperation of the inventors. Cooperation of the inventors and the stimulus given by the TTO, the internal TTO. If you do not have the cooperation of the inventor, and cooperation means the company, the industry asks you some information, and you have to give this information within, I don't know, 2 weeks. If they ask a meeting inside the laboratory to do tests, you have to be available. It seems simple, but for public entities, it's absolutely a strange situation. So, if the TTO and the inventor are collaborative on this aspect, the possibilities of good results are much higher.
2 questions, Diego. With the TTO is affected to a university. A TTO is related to one specific university,
yes.
One specific. It's not on a region basis, for instance. It's not concerned by something else that's the invention of others than the one of the university. And second point, do you have in Italy training for these people acting in the university? For instance, in France, we had from the French Patent Office originally, and then it's related to the to what is training in Strasbourg. We have a specific organization which name is IEEPI, which is trying to learn or give some courses to people in the industry, in the universities and so on, to understand how it works and how they could ameliorate their transfer. Is there any kind of, I'd say, administrative, public organized publicly training in Italy, or is it really finally the firm like yours that is doing that training to people like them?
No, the first question is the TTO is dedicated just to the entity where it's located. The only one is the National Research Council, which has 2 TTO, one in Rome, one is in Genoa, and they centralize all the activities for all the institutions they have, but they have hundreds of research institutions all around the country. And there has been exactly 2 days ago a proposal that the Italian Institute of Technology, the TTO of this entity, will become